I gotta look there. All right, guys. Hi, welcome. Transition to telehealth day 3, not 6. 3 feels like 6, feels like 60. It is day 3. All right, guys. So today I'm going to talk about caregiver training. Again, I had created this for the BCBA supervisors at the Center for Applied Behavior Analysis, and other people started watching. So welcome, everybody. Happy to have you here. Please make sure you take a moment to comment. Please like a video. That would be lovely. I guess I'm supposed to tell you to subscribe. I guess you're supposed to share. I'm going to talk to my BCBA supervisors at the Center for Applied Behavior Analysis, though, but I appreciate that more people are saying that this is helpful. I apologize. It's one of those days, right? So here we are. Although I think if people on the East Coast are there, I still have met my commitment that I am doing one webinar per day. Right now, I look super creepy if I do it in the backyard backdrop kind of thing that I was going with. So you got me in my bedroom, guys. So I guess that's the reality. By the way, how many of you have also like had a moment, many moments this week when you're like, I don't know if I really wanted to see that person's bed frame. Yeah, I don't know if I needed to know about their bed frame. No, I don't know if I needed to know about their kitchen cabinetry. I do like seeing their kids. This is weird. All right, guys, let's do it. So please, if you're not a CABA person and you're watching this, hope it's helpful, comment, like, share. Also, please, I can't tell the non-CABA people to watch all episodes. CABA BCBA supervisors, you've watched all of them, right? You're watching this now because we got a Zoom tomorrow, Saturday at 11, because you love hanging out at 11 on a Saturday. Everyone else, please at least watch the first 7 minutes of episode 1. And hey, I'm turning you guys all into scientist practitioners right now in this moment because there is an intervention line. My team came together and said, you gotta stop with the huge long intros, Rachel. So here's your intervention line. Be scientist practitioners. You guys decide if I'm more precise and jump into the content faster. Intervention line was, let's go ahead and release a separate Rachel rant because I certainly have a rant. The rant has to do with what happened today and what I feel strongly are incredibly irresponsible comments from people discontinuing services, and it's irresponsible the way they're describing their rationales, to other people who have nothing to do with service provision and yet are making statements representing different entities that are incredibly uninformed and clearly don't know employment law or any of the above. So I'm not going to do that. So intervention line, they said do Rachel rant. So sometime this weekend, I will do a separate non-transition to telehealth presentation, and I'll do that. So here we go. Let's see if it worked. Someone go back, watch the other episodes. How long did I babble? I'm not going to babble. Let's do it. All right, guys, my content today is caregiver training. Let's start with the bottom line. In order to purchase applied behavior analysis, ABA, or intensive behavior intervention services, parents of children receiving services must participate as described in the established intervention plan. Got it? Good. Let's do this. I'm making it brief. Transition to telehealth. You are a BCBA supervisor. You recognize that you're going to need to be transitioning to more telehealth services. On the first day I talked to you about, let's talk about that. What did I talk about before? I went back to the basics. First day, I oriented everyone to that which is our current situation, that which is the fact that we don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to talk about that. That's Rachel's rant. And I took us through some activity schedules because I thought it was a good basic, like, let's start here, right? And then yesterday, day 2, I jumped into considerations for adjusting your clinical programming. And I think we covered that pretty well, right? And now in my take-home point with both of those, bringing them both back to the basics, both activity schedules and adjusting your clinical programming, my point was to orient everyone to the basic foundation of behavior analysis, and that is that behavior is a function of its environment. So you're looking at the slide now, BX, behavior, function, FN, right? It's just like the little key on our computers now that we stare at way too much. Anyway, environment, I actually Googled, how are you supposed to abbreviate environment? So here we go, guys. Behavior, function, environment, approach to activity schedules. Behavior, function, environment, approach to our own levels of anxiety right now. Behavior, environment, functional approach to caregiver training. The hesitation you just saw from me is that that is such a big topic, and a topic that unfortunately has been addressed very differently depending on the ABA service provider, the population, the service setting, where the BCBA trained. And it's time for us now to make sure we're being incredibly consistent. We're coming back to that, which is defining the science and the evidence base to apply behavior analysis. So that's what I'm going to talk about today is caregiver training. I'm going to follow that theme, but I'm going to take it to more specific examples for you guys. As I just said, number one, I'm going to talk about how we're supposed to transition to establish more appropriate caregiver training goals. I did these again, just like before, in a good 5-10 minutes, but I obsessed on this one because I thought, well, I want to go with the theme of transition because that's who I'm talking to right now. I'm talking to BCBAs that are facing having to transition to telehealth services. Especially when I'm talking to the CABA BCBAs, I really hope that we didn't have inappropriate caregiver training goals before, but I guess I'm willing to own my, sorry, it's Friday. At what time can I say I own my shit like anybody else? And I'm sure there were areas that the BCBA supervisors, you guys, my CABA people who are my everything right now that I'm doing everything for, because believe me, there's no financial benefit to not discontinuing. It's actually a huge risk. But anyway, Rachel ran. So, I think you guys were doing good caregiver training goals, but in me having to think about what is being presented by transitioning to telehealth, I realized that, well, I can say more appropriate, not because maybe your goals were not appropriate before. Maybe they weren't. So hopefully you'll learn a little bit about that. More about we have to transition to establish more appropriate caregiver training goals given this transition in services, right? So the notion that we should be able to have the same caregiver training goal that we had in our report before when we were providing face-to-face supervision and face-to-face services, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So we got to transition to establish more appropriate caregiver training goals. So I'm going to spend the majority of the time on that. And I'm already 7 minutes in. Oh, how did I do that? Darn it. Oh, well, I'll try again next time. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about moving from goal setting to implementation. All right, guys, let's do this quickly. True story. This is a quote. I was a professor, as all you guys know, at least the CABA people know, and I love teaching, and caregiver training was actually my favorite topic for a really long time. I have a couple publications in that area, and I honestly thought that I would spend my whole career in that area. My master's thesis was in that area. So one day I was teaching and I was going through my caregiver training spiel, and these were people in graduate school in behavior analysis, and I was just talking about it, and somebody like had this kind of full body like vocal response. It sounded as if she was like in labor, and it was really awkward, and everyone in the room kind of looked, and I was like, I'm sorry, what's going on? And the student was awesome. She said, I'm so sorry. I'm listening to you right now. I'm a supervisor in a traditional early intervention ABA-based program. And I was all excited all morning because we just got back from returning from spring break. And I talked to the family that I support a lot. And I said, how'd it go? And they said, you know, the entire vacation was awesome, but it all fell apart. And the last day on the drive home, and the parent said to the supervisor that was my student that was having this big realization, the parent said, I just kept asking myself, what would Stacy do? And this student admitted, Stacy wasn't really her name, the student admitted that she had felt kind of like excited about that and important and needed. And now more than ever, boy, do we need to feel, I don't know if we need to feel important or needed, but we need to feel better, right? So it was a really like incredible moment that she was willing to admit to everybody that I was feeling good about this thing. And listening to you right now, I realized that maybe my perspective is totally off. That wasn't good that the parent said, what would Stacy do? If I'm truly doing effective caregiver training for the people who are genuinely spending the most amount of time with the individual who's receiving the BCBA services, the ABA services, then they should know what to do. They shouldn't be thinking, I kept thinking, what would Stacy do? So this is just a framework in addition to the initial framework from Title 17 of saying that we have to train caregivers. Is I worry that we get into these kind of arbitrary caregiver training goals that are based on these rules that are not defined by really anything other than maybe efficiency for the first organization to come up with it, or a good thing, maybe someone who did that once with one parent and it worked and it just kind of morphed. But in the end, we have to recognize that our goal with caregiver training needs to be to make sure that we are equipping a parent to where this problem isn't happening, because this is a problem. Here's another problem, because I'm full of all kinds of true stories. Parent goals. So I had a doctoral student when I was a professor, this little woman that some of you might know, she might work with me now, Dr. Megan Max, kids. She had been reviewing reports in a position that was with the regional center. So we had set up a contract with the local regional center, and she was there as a BCBA, and she was helping them audit for quality assurance for the agencies that were vendors through the regional center system. And one day she shared this goal with me. And it's kind of mind-blowing, and I'm going to try and do it quickly because I'm already at 11 minutes and I want to make this one shorter, but I think I'm just, again, setting the stage for you guys to understand the importance of us coming back to the basics, but now I'm applying that theme of the basics from episode 1 and 2 to this topic of caregiver training. The parent goal was for problem behavior maintained by attention, use behavioral skills training to teach the parent to accurately implement functional communication training plus extinction. Great, we got it. FCT plus extinction, cool. Depending on the function, that would look different, but we all can stop and see that. Great. Gradually increase response effort on the part of the parent. Initially having the parent implement 20% of the time and increase by 20% for each 3 consecutive days with at least 80% accurate implementation. Please, guys, I know we're tired, we're going through a lot, but take this goal in. Read it for a second. Okay. It sure sounds good at a glance, right? I worry that there are ABA practitioners. You guys want to know what I really worry about? Sorry, rant coming this weekend. Here's what I really worry about. We were already coming under fire as to whether or not we were providing appropriate and effective ABA, EIBI services. Now we're going to have a bunch of ABA practitioners transitioning to telehealth, and that's even harder in many ways. And if we were already potentially providing services that weren't totally up to par, we're opening a big window right now for them to go down. And this is a quote from a quality assurance team in a funding provider situation. And I'm just going to jump to the punchline because I just got feisty. Sorry, I warned y'all. This parent goal, if you looked at it and you're thinking, ooh, there's percentages and there's 3 consecutive, because everything's fine if we do it in 3 consecutive. Really, it's got nothing to do with behaviors of function of its environment and how to improve skills and how to decrease problem behavior. It's all this magical 3 consecutive and 10 trial. Stop. Don't get scared or confused or impressed by the numbers. Look at the quote one more time. This goal is telling a parent to intermittently reinforce problem behavior. One more time. This goal is telling a parent to intermittently reinforce problem behavior. So again, I gave you guys a story a moment ago where it was a quote that set the occasion for a supervisor to recognize that perhaps they weren't oriented to the goal of caregiver training, which should be for not the person to say, oh my goodness, what would my trainer do, but to know exactly what to do in the moment. And now this is another example of a BCBA supervisor submitting a parent training goal and having it so disconnected from the reality of what's going on. And by the way, from an understanding of concepts and principles and behavioral mechanisms, but I'll do that another time, that if someone actually understood and implemented this goal, they would be increasing problem behavior. So we do have a problem, guys, and these problems we need to be oriented to because they could get worse as we move into a telehealth model. So what is the punchline, guys? We do need to establish effective interventions across all settings and all situations. So when you move into telehealth, when you transition to telehealth, you're going to need to be focusing on how do I support this caregiver, potentially a staff member, possibly a parent. This is caregiver training is what I'm talking about now. So for caregiver training, how do I support this caregiver to establish effective interactions with their client, child, whoever the caregiver is assigned to? I use the term caregiver because it's not always a parent. How am I helping this person to establish effective interactions across all settings and situations? And we can imagine a million ways that you can use telehealth technology to watch this individual interact with the other individual that is receiving ABA. The second question that I'm not going to get to today, and I will try to touch on or focus on tomorrow, I don't know, it's way too late, and now I'm past midnight on the East Coast. Darn it, but I started the webinar on day 3. Teach them why those tools are effective. This is a separate question. Teaching them why those tools are effective, that's us taking them through a traditional structured caregiver training protocol where we're like, this is measurement, this is reinforcement, this is a description. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm actually going to tell you guys to do that. I'll tell you guys to do that tomorrow. Today is about that first part. How are we adjusting our caregiver training goals to make sure that we are doing everything we can to encourage that caregiver to establish effective interactions across all settings and situations at all times, 24/7, no matter how long you're talking to them? Here's the grid that we use to consider this. And I'm already at 15, so I'm going to do it quickly, but I think you guys got my take-home points here. Component, caregiver, child, trainer, take this whole grid in. It's a lot. I'll come back into it when I build on this topic tomorrow and move you guys into a more structured caregiver training curriculum. But again, you're going to need to consider what time are you going to allocate to talking one-on-one with that caregiver and taking them through the basic components of behavior analysis, which I'm saying you need to do. That's what I meant by that last slide of teaching them the why. And then during what sessions are you encouraging them to implement active treatment goals? And have you adjusted those goals to meet their current needs? So this is an example of what we call our caregiver training matrix. And it shows how we need to stop and say, I don't care what the goal is. It says goal X, right? If you look at the 3 columns, I'm saying, oh, sorry, we're not even gonna do those. So I'm trying. If you look at the 3 columns, it says caregiver, child, and trainer, right? So let's look at the child one. That's easy. If we're saying the goal is whatever it is, I have now said the prerequisite skill is vocal language. The target skills, no, not whatever it is. It's right here. I'm trying, guys. I'm trying. FCT. So the goal here is that we are trying to teach this child to request help when presented with a difficult task. So this means there was an FBA done, and it looks like there's problem behavior maintained by escape from demands. The replacement behavior is functional communication training, and we want to teach them to request help. Great. We want to do a low response effort. We can do that by having a presence of a help icon and immediate prompting from the individual helping them. In this scenario, I'm talking about the parent, okay? I don't know the stress level of the child, but we need to think about this. We should probably make sure we know what the reinforcer is that we're going to be providing contingent on doing this, okay? And I'm going to talk about measurement later. I'm just going to throw that category in there so you guys realize that we have to be evaluating things over what are the prerequisite skills for this goal? What are the target skills for this goal? What's the response effort? Let's talk about the stress level and let's make sure we know what the reinforcer is. I'll deal with the measurement later. I'm already at 17 minutes. I'm going to do this. Child is clear. Look at the column for the caregiver. Think about the same things. What are the prerequisite skills for the caregiver to implement this training target for this particular goal? What target skills do you need to know that the caregiver needs to do in this? I said prerequisite just because I was like, well, who knows? We don't know what their baseline is. You got to figure that out. What can the caregiver do? What do they need to do in order to effectively meet what we're saying the child is going to need to do? Consider what the response effort is for the caregiver. Consider what the reinforcer is for the caregiver. And definitely consider the caregiver's stress level. All right, because it's wicked high, like mine is, like yours is, like everyone's is. All right. Now you're getting my point. Look at the trainer column. That is you as the BCBA supervisor. In other words, and at CABA, we are going to be presenting you guys with an actual worksheet that you can use. We're going to look at a current goal for a child, a client, an adult, an adolescent, whatever it is, the individual, and then how to map the caregiver training goal onto that goal. That is what I'm trying to bring home to you guys today, because I think far too often we see a goal that is mapped onto the BIP. And that's what you saw in that last slide. Somebody looked at a BIP and then made a caregiver training goal. What I'm telling you today is you need to identify, listen to yesterday, listen to adjusting your clinical programming. What are the goals that we need to be targeting right now for a quality of life for this individual in the immediacy and hopefully in the near future? How do we adjust our goals to be making sure that we're constantly working on things that improve quality of life? And now I'm saying, to add on to this as well, how do we ensure in caregiver training that the caregiver training goals are completely tied to the same clinical decision making matrix, and that's what this is, that we use to establish the individual goal in the first place. And then again, consider your own well-being. Consider what you need to know. If you don't know it, that's okay. Map it out. Say, I don't know this. I might not have the prerequisite skill. And then you can bring that to your senior supervisor. Then you can bring that to your mentor. Let's be honest right now. Let's be real. Let's bring it back to the basics. I'm not going to go through these domains, but I did in the last 2 days, and I'd like to just end on this slide. I think this slide applies to what I just told you guys about caregiver training as well. But again, I hope you took a screenshot of that matrix. Tomorrow, I'm going to build on the second part, which is how do we teach them to know the why. Today was how do we train the caregivers to effectively implement the procedures. And I'm telling you that you need to make sure that the goal that you're targeting for the caregiver completely aligns with the goal for the individual client, student, child, adolescent, adult. And that B, I don't even know. Wow, I did pretty good though, up to B at 20 minutes, 52 seconds. We're 5 over the other one. I thought I'd go shorter. I'm sorry, guys. I'll go back to the backyard tomorrow as well. I think that's all I was going to say, everyone. Make sure you're taking care of yourselves. I'm trying. Made a commitment. I did it today. I feel good about it. I hope you guys like it. Please take a moment to comment, subscribe, like, share, because I'm honestly going to need some serious social reinforcement to keep doing this, dude, because this is hard. All right, guys, not as hard as what you're doing. Thank you guys for being out there. Thank you for doing this. I can't thank you enough. Bye, everybody.